Yo, what is going on, Guardians, and welcome back to another Destiny 2 gameplay video. Hey, in this video, I wanted to chat a bit about these changes that are coming to specifically the solar subclasses with the new season, the Season of Dawn, that is landing here in the very near future. I'm excited about these changes, especially for the way that they're going to change up PvP, and that's really what I wanted to focus on in this video, is sort of make some predictions about how the sandbox might adapt to the changes to these solar subclasses. So I'll start with the ones that I think will be the least effective on the sandbox, and ultimately end up on the changes that I think will be the most effective on the sandbox. So starting out with the golden gun changes. So the changes to Gunslinger, I think that these are the ones that I've seen maybe the most attention on because of the nature of the changes, but I actually think they're going to be the least dramatic in terms of how they influence the sandbox. So let's talk about these for a second. First and foremost, we have one-hit kill knives, right? And again, I'm just going to reiterate, while I think that one-hit knives sound pretty cool, I think that with a wind-up animation, I just don't see them being really too influential on the sandbox. I think that landing these things is not going to be nearly as easy as landing, obviously, like a handheld Nova. So, and I've seen a lot of hunters say, well, at least now we have something to counter handheld Novas with, and I really don't see that happening. I think that obviously a skilled Warlock using a handheld Supernova against you trying to do a wind-up animation that you can't cancel, that you have to time perfectly and hit a precision hit on, while they can just jump through the air and toss that thing. I really don't think this is going to change things up too much in the Crucible, and I especially don't see it as being something that's going to reliably counter things like the handheld Supernova. Maybe against shoulder chargers it could be a little bit more effective, because they have to put their weapons down and run in a straight line at you. But most people who are using shoulder charge aren't just, well, most people, like I said, aren't just going to run in a straight line at you while they're trying to do it. So again, I don't see this as being too dramatic or too powerful of a thing. I think this is going to be more of like a flashy, gimmicky, every now and then you're going to hit one of these things. It's going to feel pretty cool. But in a brief interaction I had with DMG on Twitter, the way that, because I had said, I'm bummed that we're losing that instant release knife that's going to give you big precision damage, and and his response was, wait till you try it out. It's really fun when you hit these precision knives, even if there is a long wind up for it. And if you like the quick release, you can always play the other tree. So that to me suggests you don't have that quick release option. A lot of people were predicting that if you just tapped the button, that it would do just the regular knife, and that if you hold it, it would do the charge up animation. But the way that he responded to that tweet leads me to believe that there is no quick release option for that skill tree, because like he said, if you like the quick release, you can always play the other tree. You know what I mean? So if he wanted to put me at ease, he could have said, you still have that option on that subclass, but that's not what he said. So anyways, just a little tidbit, a little bit of insight there that I gleaned from the wording there. So one-hit kill knives, I think they sound cool, sound kind of fun, maybe really rewarding, but not too powerful in the long run. The proximity knife, I think, actually sounds like it's got a lot more utility to it. So you can actually miss your knife, but it'll stick there, and maybe, depending on how long it'll remain where you stick it, that could have some more utility, be a little bit more forgiving, because if you miss the knife and then they come back to that corner and they run over it, it depends on how visible these knives are. Are they going to have sort of a flashing beacon mechanic that the trip mines have? Also, you could do sort of wombo combos where you could throw the sticky knife and the trip mine in the same spot and wait for somebody to walk by. Again, it depends on the explosive radius of the knife, but that could be a nice little wombo combo trap to catch unsuspecting players off guard, or just to lock down, maybe you're getting pinched from two angles and you wombo combo the doorway on your right and focus on the guy on your left. That way the guy on your right is going to get slowed down. He's either going to walk through it and blow up, or he's going to have to stop, shoot the things, remove the threat, and then push you. So it could be just a way of gatekeeping people and sort of helping you manage chaos. I think the proximity knife is actually going to have a lot more utility than the one-hit kill knife, in my opinion. But I think ultimately the thing that really will affect the sandbox is how good these knock 'em up, line 'em down changes are going to be. So just how much weapon stability are you going to get with these precision stacks, or these precision hit stacks for knock 'em down? And just how much ADS speed are you going to get? because the idea is that the more precision hits you get, the more like in the zone you're getting, right? So your gun gets more stable, your ADS speeds get much faster. So it depends on how how much those affect things. It also depends on how that then translates to line them up, because if you have enough stacks, you're going to do more damage with your super with the 3-shot Goldie. So the question is it going to be enough damage to one shot to the body? Roaming supers like the Smash, the Burning Maul. Yeah, so we don't have the math yet, but I think that really how effective the precision tree is going to get comes down to how good those buffs are to knock them up and line them down. But again, the one-hit kill knives I don't see as being a major changing factor in the landscape of things in the Crucible. So Goldie changes, moving on. Sunbreaker changes. These are bigger changes in my opinion. I think honestly, Sunbreaker is going to ultimately end up being the better subclass to choose as a Titan for especially things like quick play. Well, not just quick play, but any 6v6 environment because of the nature of these changes. So if you're a little out of the loop, the throwing hammer itself got a buff. It's going to do more damage out of the gate. Instead of 100, it's going to do 120. And it's got, instead of a 10% buff with the Roaring Flames perk active, it's going to do a 25% buff. So that's pretty significant. So you're going from doing 100 base damage to 120 base damage when you throw that throwing hammer. And then if you get a kill with it and you pick it back up, now it's going to do 150 damage. And then, I mean, that's a ton of damage. That is a ton of damage. Basically shoot somebody once and throw the hammer, bam, they're dead. Then you go pick it up again. Now it's going to do 188 damage. That's essentially enough to one-hit kill a low resilience player. So these are big damage buffs. While they don't directly translate to having one-hit kill hammer streaks the way that using Wormgod's Caress does right now, which is an exotic gauntlet for the Titans, which is fantastic, which is what I'm using in the gameplay you're watching right now. That's why I have some one-hit kill hammer streaks in here. Even in comp, I was able to clutch up a round because I finished a guy off with the throwing hammer, and because I have one stack of Burning Fists and one stack of Roaring Flames, the throwing hammer then does enough damage, does 200 damage, does enough damage to one-hit kill an opponent. So I was able to, in a 1v2, clutch up the round by killing the first guy with the hammer, picking it up, pulling a 180, and just Hail Marrying this hammer, and one-hit killing the second player before he could finish me off. And it's actually really effective even in a comp environment. As you can see, a lot of the gameplay here is actually in comp, and you see some one-hit kill hammers that were able to save my life and also simultaneously regenerate my health, because when you pick up the hammer after you hit somebody with it, it cues health regeneration. So that's very nice. Now they also buffed the pickup radius of that hammer. So a lot of times in the moment you're trying to find your hammer, and in the chaos you die trying to find it, trying to queue up that health regeneration. But luckily they buffed the radius by almost double, so you're going to be able to more reliably pick up that hammer. Now, like I said, that doesn't translate to one-hit kill hammers consistently, reliably. You're still going to probably want to use Wormgod's Caress in order to do that. Otherwise, you're looking at getting 2 to 3 stacks before you're going to start really reliably hitting people for basically all of their health. But anyways, big buff to the throwing hammer. It's much more lethal now, which is pretty exciting. The Roaring Flames buff got a 5-second extension as well, so you're going from 15 seconds of having Roaring Flames to 20 seconds, which is pretty substantial. It's enough time to really pick your next engagement wisely before you go aping in with your Roaring Flames. So extra 5 seconds there. The super itself, holy cow. These are some major buffs. It's gonna last almost 30 seconds now. Like, that's pretty crazy. Well, at 30 seconds duration, it's like 28.5 or something, right? So almost 30 seconds for the duration of the super. And while that does sound really long, you got to remember that timer is based on you consuming no energy. So if you were to pop your super and just stand there, it would last that long. But you're not going to be doing that. You're going to be spinning like crazy. You're going to be doing these overhead slams. So it's going to, depending on how you choose to use your super energy, that will shorten that the extension of that super. So one major change is that the light attack, the spinning attack, you can now infinitely chain that. So instead of spinning and then stopping, spinning, stopping, you can just spin, 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 spin. Spin to win if you want, So infinitely chaining the spinning attack, which is kind of neat. And I'm sure that will actually look pretty funny. But the thing about that change is, and it's going to cost less energy, by the way. The thing about that change that I see being helpful is that the Burning Maul super is so easy to shut down because it's sort of this big hulking lumbering just running at you super. So it's easy to get precision hits on it and shut it down early. But with this change, you can essentially use the spinning as a movement ability, you know, and if somebody gets in your way, you can kill them too. But I see this really being useful because you can just chain this spin attack to carry your momentum and move, you know, across the room or through the battlefield, and avoid being shut down so easily because you're not just running in a straight line at somebody. You know what I mean? Now the fire tornadoes got a buff. They're gonna go more vertical. So those stupid hunters that keep jumping over your super and it's infuriating, you're like, why won't you die? So the tornado is going to find them more reliably. It's going to detect that they're up there, and it's going to have like a spire, right, that's going to reach all the way up there and kill them. So that's very nice. It also got a radius buff. So killing people with the heavy attack is going to be much more consistent. And the exchange there is that it's going to cost a little bit more energy to do that heavy attack. You can't just spam it. So anyways, costs a little more energy, but it's going to be a lot more reliable. You're going to miss fewer tornadoes is the be all, end all be all. But all this to say, man, I think that this is now going to become the cream of the crop for Titans. It's already a pretty good subclass when you know how to lean into its strengths, but especially more so now that it's got some really significant buffs to the things that were its major weak points. And so between the throwing hammer and the super buffs, I think this is going to be really freaking good. I think these buffs are more dramatic than the hunter buffs to the golden gun subclasses. Moving on, the final subclass changes is the Dawnblade. These are the ones I'm most excited for because, as you probably well know, I've logged more time on a top tree Dawnblade than any other subclass in the game. Now, I do play all the subclasses pretty consistently, but my bread and butter is top tree Dawnblade. And it's finally actually getting some buffs, which is pretty exciting. So one of the things that's worth noting here is that the bottom tree Dawnblade super is actually getting nerfed. Not in its damage output, not in its super energy regeneration on kill, not in those ways, but in its speed. So they said they backed off on the speed of the Dawnblade when you're using Burst Glide, which right now just sends you flying across the map. Now, the bottom tree super, in my opinion, was the best super in the game. While the neutral game of bottom tree wasn't that exciting or wasn't that particularly good, the super was the best super in the game, in my opinion. And if you don't agree with it being the best, you can definitely see why it would be in the top 3. Because you have so much mobility. You fly around the map. No one can escape you. It is literally impossible to escape. You can't outrun a Dawnblade using Burst Glide in their super. You can't do it. Now, on top of that, it was able to regenerate its own super energy on kills, which was pretty dramatic. And you were able to get some... I mean, obviously, a lot of people got their first 7th columns using this super. I got my first 7th column in Destiny 2 using this super. And that's why. Just because you can hunt down the entire team in a matter of seconds. So, and you can go from one side of the map to the other side of the map and get even more kills with it. Well, they backed off on that speed, so that tree got a little bit of a nerf, but one of the things you might think, well, okay, well then top tree is going to be slower now. What they ended up doing is transferring that giant burst of speed from the Burst Glide and saying that's no longer tied to Burst Glide, that's now tied to Icarus Dash, which is exciting as a top tree Dawnblade because what that means is you can still get that huge burst of speed in your super like you could, but it was kind of wonky trying to get the direction right when you're using that burst, you know what I'm saying? Now, with it being tied to Icarus Dash, you can change your direction and your momentum like turning on a dime mid-air and just fly off in a different direction, which is great because then you're going to be able to avoid being taken out of your super too quickly because you're going to be a little bit more unpredictable as you can just burst in any direction you want at any moment. And that'll just make your movement so much harder to track. And you know, that might sound OP to some people, but just keep in mind if you don't play this skill tree, as most people, I mean absolutely most people do not play this subclass because it has been historically known as being a weaker subclass or having a higher skill gap. It's just not as approachable as some of the easier skill trees to play. Well, keep in mind that this super does not have the tracking abilities of the bottom tree Dawnblade. You might be used to seeing those Dawnblade swords like turn really sharply to track you and kill you. Top tree doesn't do that. Those swords have to be really well placed. It has a very, very, very minimal tracking. So those swords are really hard to hit. So they're going to have to be smart about the ways that they close the gaps on you, but their movement is just going to be insane. And I'm really excited about that as a change. Also, the Icarus Dash is going to have 2 charges when you're not in your super, so you can just almost like Twilight Garrison before it was nerfed in D1. You can burst, right? And that's going to be fun for some aerial mobility and maybe juking people out, juking supers that are trying to hit you, juking rockets, juking all kinds of cool things. Especially, I can tell you this as somebody who uses this skill tree a lot. The Icarus Dash is really nice for dodging things like air and till shots. You hear them charging up, and then you do your dash, and you end up making the air and till whiff. And now you're going to have 2 charges for it, and it's going to carry your momentum further. So that's pretty exciting. You're going to have a lot more mobility. Then you're also going to get this perk called Celestial Fire, which is a new melee ability for the Dawnblade. And they called it like a spiraling fireball. It's like 3 projectiles that sort of spiral. You can actually see it in the new trailer they released at 1 minute and 23 seconds. You'll see a warlock gliding through the air and throwing this fireball. It's like 3 little fireballs, and it's not like a spread, like a shotgun effect. It's very linear, and it sort of spirals straight at, sort of corkscrews straight at the target, right? It looks really neat, and I'm excited to play with it. It looks like a really nice addition to the Dawnblade subclass. So that's pretty neat. In addition to that, you've got this perk called Heat Rises, which is not new, but the thing about Heat Rises is that now it's been reworked. You can consume your grenade, okay? And, you know, historically, a top tree Dawnblade has not been able to consume the grenade, but now you consume your grenade, and it gives you longer glide, so you can stay in the air longer, and you have better in-air accuracy. It reduces the accuracy penalties while airborne. That's pretty cool. And in addition to that, you've got Winged Sun, which is an ability that makes it so that any kills you get while you're airborne are going to extend the duration of Heat Rises. It's going to keep you up in the air longer as you're getting kills up there. And it's also going to give you more melee energy for every kill you get while airborne. So the idea is that you're just going to stay up in the air. You're going to be like a C-130 up there. Now, just remember that that means you don't have cover. So this isn't going to be like, you know, crazy broken or anything. You're going to be have to be smart about the way that you use your in-air abilities. But the idea is that you're gonna want to do as much combat while airborne as possible. But use your Icarus dashes because you don't have cover up there. You are a sitting duck. You don't want to do that in a big open lane. You're probably going to get just pegged from, you know, way across the map. So you want to be cautious about when and where you use that ability. So, well, I don't want this. I know this is a longer video because there's a lot of changes, but I don't want to ramble on too much. But I wanted to run those things by you. I think that the Dawnblade changes are going to be the most dramatic. The most dramatic. They're going to way change up the way that that subclass plays, more so than the other changes are going to change things up. Sunbreaker changes are pretty substantial. I think it's going to make that the cream of the crop for Titans in the following season. The Goldie changes I think sound kind of cool and a little fun, but ultimately not too dramatic in the way that they're actually going to change the way that hunters play. So let me know what you guys think. What are you most excited about? What changes have you jazzed and riled up? I'm excited to play these changes when they launch. And thanks for watching the video. Be warm and well fed. Hope to catch you in the Crucible. Bye-bye.